Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can we start off with a roll call, please?
Council President Perez.
Here.
Councilmember Van.
Here.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Here.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Here.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Here.
Councilmember Prince.
Here.
And Councilmember Corman.
Here.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor, all present.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a proclamation.
Okay. Proclamation. Whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and/or abuse. And whereas it has been estimated that every 9 seconds a woman is beaten by her husband or boyfriend in this country, and in more than half of those instances, children under the age of 12 are present. And whereas more than half of abusers responsible for domestic violence related fatal shootings were prohibited by law from owning firearms. And whereas domestic violence does not discriminate and crosses all economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal barriers, and is sustained by indifference. And whereas the City of Renton is working to improve the overall response to and the reduction of domestic violence in our region with awareness to the cultural differences in our community, and whereas our nation continues to combat the coronavirus pandemic, domestic violence has increased and the need for services has been limited. And whereas domestic violence is one of the most dangerous calls for law enforcement, and the safety of those involved, along with the community, is a critical situation. And whereas October is nationally recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, now therefore I, Armando Pavoni, Mayor of the City of Renton, do hereby proclaim October 2020 to be Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Renton. And I encourage everyone in our community to take an active role in supporting all victims so they can lead healthy lives safe from violent and abusive behavior. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Renton to be affixed this 5th day of October 2020, signed Armando Pavoni, Mayor of the City of Renton.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember O'Halloran.
may I say a few words before I move on this proclamation?
Yes, please.
I witnessed traumatic violence multiple times in my childhood home. It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I had a full understanding of the impact that these experiences had on my development and on my relationships. To this day, I still have occasional waves of panic and self-doubt. I share this to highlight that we don't always know who's had this trauma in their lives. We do know that domestic violence affects not just the targeted individual. It affects all of us, even if indirectly. One way or the other, it ultimately impacts our community. And with that, I move that the council adopt the proclamation as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember O'Halloran, seconded by Council President Perez, that the proclamation be adopted as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries. And to accept this proclamation, I believe we have Tina Harris joining us.
I don't see Tina signed in, Mr. Mayor. Steve Van Bailey? Oh, there she is. Okay. Sorry. Good.
Thank you, council and council members. I'd like to accept this proclamation on behalf of the residents of the City of Renton. Domestic Violence Awareness Month has been and continues to be a very difficult month within our community. We definitely appreciate the support of our mayor, our council members, our chief of police, and all those who attempt to support victims of domestic violence within our community. COVID has definitely made an impact. Our numbers have increased exponentially. Our courts have also seen an increase in protection orders, and through the judicial system, means that we aren't fully able to prosecute the cases or come to full terms with the cases, I should say, has been challenging to our city prosecutors, but they're doing an amazing job at maintaining and keeping these cases active, on board, and hopefully holding the defendants accountable within our community. Once again, I'd like to thank the council, the mayor, and our community for recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And if any of the community members are experiencing domestic violence, I would ask you to call our domestic violence hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or our community hotline at 211 to receive services.
Thank you very much, Tina. Okay, tonight we have a number of public hearings. The first one is the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program, and I believe we have Angie here to brief.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Can everyone see this? Oh, I can share the screen now. All right. The Transportation Improvement Program is a multi-year planning document that plans for transportation projects and programs that support the city's mission and vision and enhance or extend the bicycle or pedestrian network. The TIP is a planning document that identifies transportation-related projects which are or may become eligible for federal, state, and/or local funding. One of the most important purposes of the TIP is that local projects must be included to be eligible for state and federal grant programs. The annual update of the TIP is how the Transportation Systems Division adjusts changing conditions and plans to meet the needs of the city, meets our commitments while staying in alignment to the city's business plan. What is new this year is that this year's document includes an updated prioritization process that provides more information on why projects are in the TIP, if they are funded, and what project stage they are in. We've accepted new grants, as you've seen in budget presentations. There are adjusted scopes on some existing projects, and there are a few new unfunded projects. In prior TIPs, projects and programs were prioritized in these 5 categories. However, in many items that transportation undertakes, they have multiple purposes. Now each program and project have the ability to denote multiple project aspects: plan, implementation and compliance, operations and safety, active transportation multimodal, and maintenance and preservation. To create one prioritized list, the following factors were incorporated to create the priority framework. Each program and project is scored by how strongly they address each certain criteria, then ranked in one list. This map shows the 2021 to 2026 TIP projects. The way the map is displayed is different than prior years. The funded and partially funded projects are colored in yellow and are also the projects in Transportation's Capital Improvement Program, or CIP. The circle graph shows how the TIP projects are divided amongst the neighborhood planning areas. The yellow pie piece are programs that are citywide. Each project has a funding status identifier, which change depending on what stage the project is in and if the project is fully funded. There is also a new candidate status, which states there is no determined funding right now, but a candidate project can be unfunded, but can also be ranked high in the priority list. These are a few examples of the candidate projects in this year's TIP. The previous TIP documents contained project scopes that were not feasible within 6 years. Some candidate projects are these same projects with updated scopes, so the city is ready to address the most critical sections, whether it be through grants or other sources. The navy blue bars represent the expenditures of secured funding in this year's TIP. This chart is a breakdown of those navy blue bars by revenue source. The blue sections are grant funds that we have been awarded. Grant processes are competitive and are not guaranteed revenues. The TIP sets a priority ranking for projects in the transportation CIP as it exists right now. Since the budget conversation started prior to this presentation, this chart connects the dots. The projects that do not have funding do not get included in the CIP. Staff recommends that this year's TIP is approved for adoption. Thank you, and do we have any questions?
Questions of council? Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to comment?
For the record, my name is Julia Mazigian. I am the City Council Liaison. I have no one signed up in advance to speak to the public hearing on the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the council regarding the TIP? If so, please raise your hand via computer. If you are on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. I see no one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Jason, do we have any correspondence?
We have no We have no correspondence for the TIP, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. What's the wish of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
yes, I'd like to move that we close the public hearing and just note that we also have a committee report to present on this matter later this evening.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the public hearing be closed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. Public hearing is closed. First one down. The second public hearing is extended moratorium on large residential developments, and we have Paul Hintz to brief us on this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. This is a public hearing for moratorium, extension of a moratorium on large residential projects in the Sunset area. And just for the record, I'm Paul Hintz, and my phone number is 425-430-7436. As I mentioned, we currently have an existing moratorium in place today, which was adopted on April 6th of this year. That's number 5967, and that established a moratorium on the acceptance of applications for large residential projects, 150 units or more, in the Sunset area, as well as a moratorium on acceptance of fee waiver requests for large residential projects. State law requires a public hearing for emergency ordinances be held within 60 days of adoption, and public hearing was held for that moratorium on June 1st this year. Ordinance 5967 will sunset, however, tomorrow, unless left sooner by City Council or extended the moratorium that's before you tonight. As mentioned, this will extend the application on applications for large residential projects. However, it will not extend the moratorium on fee waivers, which, by the way, is currently, there's a moratorium that is in place over that, but that is being handled on a separate course of action. If City Council adopts this moratorium, it will be in place until April 6th of next year, unless lifted sooner. And the reasons for this moratorium is that large residential projects typically exceed the scope and scale of projects that we experience in the Sunset area. And so staff currently have 2 docket items, amendments to code that we're working through. One is to ensure that modifications to existing site plans are mitigated for negative impacts where necessary, and consistency with Renton Municipal Code is upheld. And then also recognizing that the city has made significant investments in the Sunset area over the past couple of decades, and that we have a need for both affordable and market rate housing in that area of the city. And staff is also reviewing best practices to support housing opportunities for a wide range of incomes, and so this moratorium will afford us that time to do that work. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to comment?
Mr. Mayor, for the record, my name is Julia Medzigian. I'm the City Council Liaison. I have no one signed up in advance to speak to the public hearing regarding the extension on the moratorium on large residential developments. If there is anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of this public hearing, please raise your hands. I see no one, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Jason, do we have any correspondence?
I have no correspondence on this matter, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Jason. What's the wish of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move we close the public hearing. Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven that the public hearing be closed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, hearing is closed. Next and last up is the second biennial budget 2021-2022 public hearing. And we did hear from Jan earlier. Jan, do you have anything to add at this point?
Just a few opening comments. The city is required to hold at least 2 public hearings prior to the adoption of the budget, the setting of the property tax levy for the upcoming year. The city of Renton actually holds 3 hearings. We held one on June 1st. Tonight represents the second public hearing, and the third and final will be on November 2nd, prior to the first reading of the budget-related legislation and the setting of the property tax rate. And details regarding the city's budget can be found on the city's website at rentonwa.gov/budget.
Thank you, Jan. Any questions at this point? Oh. Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to comment?
Mr. Mayor, this is Julia Medzigian. I'm the City Council Liaison. I have 3 people signed up in advance to speak on behalf of the budget public hearing. When I call your name, I will unmute you, and you will have up to 5 minutes to address council. First, we have Jaden Aubrin. Go ahead, Jaden.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Jaden. I live in Renton, and I'm a mental health professional working with the homeless in King County. So my job really focuses on evidence-based solutions for our housing crisis currently in King County, specifically through harm reduction and housing first philosophies, which have been empirically proven to be the most successful and affordable ways and healthy ways to house the homeless population. And so King County, I'm aware, is creating a health through housing plan, a tax plan. And so that is very exciting for our organization to hear that there's going to be this commitment to healthy housing based on evidence-based solutions, including housing first and harm reduction. But I have heard recently that the Renton City Council is thinking about enacting their own sales tax that would not be supporting the health through housing plan. And as your constituent, I was just curious as to why that is, and would really encourage you all to adopt the King County Health Through Housing Plan. Mostly, if my main curiosity and question is, if you're not going to adopt the King County plan, what is your plan for ending homelessness in Renton? I think we can all agree that homelessness is not region specific. It doesn't end at the Seattle-Renton line. And, you know, as someone who works in all of King County and serves clients throughout all of King County, you know, I'm traveling all over King County dealing with the homeless population and serving them. And so if Renton were to not, you know, kind of follow the King County plan, then that really just disservices all of our clients and makes it harder for all of us to do our jobs, which at the end of the day is to get the homeless population out of the street, into housing, not bothering other people, and getting them to live their most productive lives. So what is your plan for homelessness and the homeless populations? And would you be willing to consider adopting the King County tax plan and supporting evidence-based health through housing approach? That's all.
Okay, thank you, Jaden. The next person I have signed up to speak is Casey Hahn.
Mr. Mayor, before we go to the next speaker,
Yes, sir.
sir, could I just make a suggestion for the callers that if they're speaking about the homelessness sales tax, they actually should speak to that during the regular audience comment portion. That's actually a different portion of the meeting. This particular portion is for testimony on the 2021-2022 budget. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the budget hearing. Do we still have people that want to speak to?
Casey Hahn, do you still want to speak on the budget public hearing?
No, I was hoping to speak in the more public comments about the housing, health to housing. So I'll refrain from speaking now.
Okay, I'll hold your comments till then. Dr. Linda Smith, did you want to speak on behalf of the budget public hearing?
Okay.
Linda?
Yes.
Did you want to speak on behalf of the budget public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. To Honorable Mayor Pavoni, Chairperson Ruth Perez, and City Council member, I am Dr. Linda Smith, Renton resident. I'm here tonight to continue to advocate for a budget that is reflective of meeting the needs of all of its residents, including those marginalized, particularly those who are marginalized through homelessness, economic injustice, and education. After hearing your opening statement, Mr. Mayor, tonight, I am encouraged by your verbal commitment in terms of creating equity for the residents of the city of Renton. However, nothing that I heard in the budget will address the inequities that we have been presenting on behalf of the community. I recognize and acknowledge that this is a very challenging year because of COVID-19. But the reason COVID-19 has such a devastating impact is because Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color have typically been left out of the budget, creating long-term inequities and their ability to live healthy lives. The Renton City Council approved Resolution number 4414, adopted 2021-26 business plan to strengthen its stand against racism in support of racial equity on August 3, 2020. The following demands support concepts presented in resolution through actions and funding necessary for achieving equitable outcome for Renton residents and becoming an anti-racist city. We know that without funds, these are just words. A commitment without funds is not a budget. This budget is an opportunity to address historical wrongdoing and to continue to bring about justice for all, leaving no one behind. This should be a moral budget, a budget that is inclusive of human issues of life and health, and meeting the demands of those who are struggling, underserved, and systematic injustices that continue to deprive certain groups of the population equality and equity. In order to change this long history of injustices that have dramatically and severely impacted BIPOC, Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color, a moral framework must be integrated within this budget that is being proposed. The current budget proposal I listened to this evening consists of personnel-related cost services, including utility payments and other items, and nothing I heard specifically for human services and programs. Now, to absent this, I believe is a derelict of duties and a lack of commitment to the residents of tax-paying community, especially Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. Being a city that prides itself in being ahead of the curve is a dream that can become a reality when equity for all residents are achieved. We, BIPOC, Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color, demand that you create the Equity and Empowerment Commission. You create an anti-racist budget by directing revenues to social services and basic needs like mental health services, meeting the 50% employment and contracting for Black people and people of color, and the racial investment to secure equity. So I recognize this evening that what we heard in the Committee of the Whole is a general budget, but we look forward to hearing specific details addressing specific demands and the needs of the community in which we all live and that everyone can be served. So I am hoping that over the next couple of weeks, we will at least hear from someone. Because if we don't hear from someone, it says that the meetings that we've been coming to and people that we've been talking to, that it's insignificant. But I believe it's important that this be a more budget, and a more budget is a budget that really address the issues of humanity. Again, thank you for your continued work, your continued focus on bringing about equity here in the city of Renton, a place where we all belong. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anyone else signed up in advance to speak. If you would like to speak to council, please raise your hand. If you're in the audience and you've called in via phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. First hand I have raised is Krista. Go ahead, Krista.
Good evening, Mayor Pavoni, President Perez, and members of the council. My name is Krista Strasba, and I am a Renton resident. I'm speaking tonight to express my support of the Stand for Justice budget demands presented to you by Dr. Linda Smith and Mr. Joseph Todd on September 14th of this year. To review, the demands presented are supported by community members and align with concepts set forth in the city's resolution number 4414, adopt the 2021 to 2026 business plan to strengthen its stand against racism in support of racial equity. The demands include create the Equity and Empowerment Commission, create an anti-racist budget by directing revenue to social services and basic needs, meet 50% employment and contracting for Black people and people of color, and the RISE program, racial investment to secure equity. Since May, when George Floyd was murdered, you've heard many public comments and received numerous emails with calls from your constituents to embrace anti-racism. We've asked you to include anti-racist language in city documents and to literally put it on our streets so that everyone knows Black Lives Matter here in Renton. It's been 4 months and 11 days since George Floyd's life was taken. That's 134 days that residents have been asking for racial justice to be made a priority in our city. On August 3rd, you might remember a different public comment by a Renton Highlands resident. The resident was requesting a concealed pistol license. It was apparent through his public comment that city representatives had already coordinated with him by the time he made his public request for your help. After only 3 minutes of stating his case, the council motioned, seconded, and approved this matter be officially referred to administration for a solution. It all happened on the spot, live in a meeting just like this one, in a matter of minutes. I am asking tonight that you approach racial justice in Renton with the same sense of collaboration and clarity by publicly stating and showing community your support of the Stand for Justice budget demands. Thank you.
Okay, the next hand I have raised is Joseph T. Go ahead.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'd like to speak to, actually, let me start by saying my name is Joseph Todd, and I'm a Renton resident. One of the big things that I really want to express here is that I want to speak directly to Mayor Pavoni. So Mayor Pavoni, I remember when I first met you, you were at a park event that we had in my community, and you were just starting out on your campaign of running for mayor. And I had some choices that I had to make between you and another candidate. And in that park that day, you just expressed...
Mr. Todd?
I'm sorry?
You're supposed to be addressing the city council on the budget. Is this for the budget?
I'm addressing... This is definitely for a public hearing for the budget.
Okay.
So, when you and I had that conversation, when you and I met in the park, I saw you as that person. I saw you as that person that I really needed to have a conversation with so that I could address what's going on in this community from a person of color and then from a indigenous population. I felt like you were the guy who could really accomplish that work. And you sold me. You sold me that day that you're the guy that I needed to vote for. And so I'm curious as to find out, like, why can't I get that same feedback from you now that you're now mayor and that the city council is taking up, looking at the budget, that we've got this Equity and Empowerment Commission. We have the Create an Anti-Racist Budget by Directing Revenue to Social Services and Basic Needs. And we have the Meet the 50% Employment and Contract for Black People and People of Color, and also the Racial Investment to Secure Equity Program. I'm wondering why I can't get a direct address from you or the council to figure out why can't we put this plan in place? Why can't we have budget directed toward these particular initiatives? And like I said, when I met you in that park, I knew you were the guy. I knew the person that could run this city, and I believed in you. And I'm looking for that same engagement that I had in that park. I mean, you and I discussed how to run a successful campaign. We talked about how, you know, we want our kids to be successful in the community and the things that you want to accomplish. And like I said, I believe in you, and I believe in this city council, and I'm looking for you to support these demands because they're coming from the community. They're things that I want for my son, and I'm hoping those are things that you want for your kids, for your children as well. For us to have an equitable community that's able to push forward our citizens, our residents, to be successful no matter what color they are. So again, my belief in you hasn't changed, and I'm looking forward to you being that guy that I met in that park that day. Thanks.
Okay, the next person that has their hand raised that would like to address the council regarding the 2021-2022 budget public hearing is Lanissa Youngquist. Go ahead, Lanissa.
Yes, hi, I'm Lanissa Youngquist. Thank you, Council and Mayor and President Perez tonight for listening to our concerns and our demands. I am in support of the community budget demands made by the Renton Residents for Change. These demands are from your community and for your community. Protecting and serving looks different for different citizens. And when you're listening to the voices of your citizens, you'll hear our voices say we want to be involved and informed in this. In part of the budget demand number 1, we want citizen oversight. When the city has its community involvement to view and understand the budget, there will be a clear interpretation of the anti-racial efforts and finances for these efforts. This revenue would create support to our police officers and our citizens both with social services, such as social workers as responders working with our officers. This is a demand. Number 2, create an anti-racist budget by directing revenue to social services and basic needs. As we ask for these demands, we ask because these things are overdue, and overdue for our city, for our neighbors, and everyone who lives around us. We know you're in public office because you want to see these changes also. So please don't let this slip by and pass off the conversation between your fellow council members, police chief, and city officials. Get into this conversation with us. Let us do this work together. Tell the others among you right now, tonight, that we need to start talking and make action. We need to act on this because it's an ongoing call from your community, and we'll just keep asking. We'll just keep demanding. We are here because you need to listen to us. We are your members of the community. We are calling on you to make this elected seat that you're sitting in an impact today in our town. Thank you.
Okay, the next person with the hand raised to address council on the budget public hearing is Elizabeth Rawlings.
Good evening, Mayor Pavone, President Perez, and City Council members. My name is Reverend Elizabeth Rawlings, and I live in the Renton Highlands. I'm here tonight with you to speak in support of the Stand for Justice budget demands. As a Christian minister, I believe it is incumbent on me and all Christians to work to fulfill the biblical call to end oppression, to lift up and center the marginalized, and to consider that which we do to our neighbors we do to Jesus. Now, I know that we cannot legislate from Scripture. While it may be an individual anchor for some, in the United States, we, in theory, govern based on concepts like public good and economics and policy outcomes. A budget is both a policy statement and, as Dr. Linda said, a moral document. It reflects the values of the city more clearly and accurately than any public statements, and truly shows whether the city is ahead of the curve and guided, as the business plan states, by a commitment to build an inclusive, informed city with equitable outcomes for all in support of social, economic, and racial justice for all. Currently, the city does not spend near enough on social services and basic needs. When I worked at Luther's Table, I saw firsthand the effects of this deficit in spending on social services like assistance for unhoused persons and mental health care. There was so much need and so little assistance to meet it. And this lack of aid affects both our residents and our local businesses. In addition, social support is critical to the issue addressed earlier tonight, domestic violence. The city gives lip service to racial justice, but the words we hear do not appear to be matched by fiscal commitments to making our BIPOC residents safer and more prosperous. I hear concerns from my friends and neighbors, their fear of police, their worries about unemployment, their feelings of not feeling represented or seen, and the Stand for Justice demands would work towards greater safety and prosperity for my friends and neighbors. These demands would bring the city closer to actually being ahead of the curve and its commitment to justice, as well as have economic benefits for the city. Who do we want to be as a community? What do we want our budget to say about us as Renton and you as officials? For the city's future and for all of its residents, I urge you to include the Stand for Justice demands in the biennial budget. Thank you.
Okay, next hand I have raised is for Priyanya Smith. Go ahead, Priyanya.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the time. Good evening to Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Priyanna, and I'm a resident of Renton. Today, I am speaking in support of the Stand for Justice budget demands. One day, headed to work at my hospital, a man was laying on the street in front of the valet curb. No one stopped to help him. I stopped and saw he had one of our hospital bracelets, and I called for help. This raised two questions. Why would so many people walk past him? Why was this man, who may have been homeless and struggling, not handed over to resources to help him? Dr. Martin Luther King reminds us, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. All men, humanity, are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. I would like to highlight the Stand for Justice budget demand item number 2, create an anti-racist budget by directing revenue to social services and basic needs. The budget should be used for preventative service to include community services, basic mental health response services and treatment, training, community engagement, and creating and supporting an anti-racist approach to community administration, business plans, policy, and budget. And I just wanted to reiterate the fact that, again, the budget is a moral document. And the lady earlier who was talking about mental health in our community, I think it's more of a waste of money not to make sure that we help the people that need help when they end up needing the help in the first place. So thank you for your time. I yield.
Okay, the next person I have with a raised hand to speak is Darcy Gimestad.
Hello and good evening to everyone and to the elected officials, elected leaders of the city that I have lived in for 34 years. I totally support the comments by Dr. Linda Smith, and I have been an employee of the Renton School District for over 20 years as an ECAP and Head Start teacher, working with children who live in the margins. I know that institutional and systemic racism is real. To the leaders of this city, if you really want to be ahead of the curve, adopt this budget and become an anti-racist city. There is a lot of stuff going on in this country right now. And it is time for people who are anti-racist and people who care about humanity to stand up. City Council and Mayor Pavone, you have an opportunity to stand up at a time where people need to stand up for what is right in this country and to stand against institutional racism and structural racism. This is a beautiful opportunity right here that Dr. Linda Smith and the others who have spoken before me have presented to you to show that this city that I call home is truly ahead of the curve.
Okay, are you done, Darcy?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council regarding the budget public hearing? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, I have someone with just a phone number, the last four of the phone number 7112. Go ahead, and if you could, start with your name and the city you live in. Okay, also have Casey Hahn. Let's go ahead and start
Hello,
with.
can you hear me?
Oh, just a moment, Casey. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time getting off mute. Good evening, Mayor Pavone, President Perez, and council members. My name is James Strasbaugh, and I'm a longtime resident. and as a white male, I'm speaking tonight to express my support for the Stand for Justice budget demands set forth by Dr. Linda Smith, Joseph Todd, and others who have spoken on this call and previous calls. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Or should I start now?
Sorry, Casey, I was on mute. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Hello, my name is Casey Hahn, a resident of Renton for the last 5 years, and it is a joy to actually earlier to be able to see all of you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. Just grateful for all of your leadership. And I'm so sorry, I got confused as to when to speak. Monday nights, I spend out in our parking lot here at St. Matthew's where we are feeding, there are cars fully, they've been already feeding people for about 2 hours and they're continuing. So I've been hopping back and forth between our free grocery store here at St. Matthew's. But just briefly, I want to speak about some other things in a little bit, but I wanted to speak in full support of just really moving forward with the budget demands for Stand for Justice. And really to kind of how do we, I would like to continue to explore with the City Council, how do we put into policy those things that will continue to ensure that there is equal access. As many of you have done all sorts of anti-racism workshops or diversity training, we know that there's a difference between diversity and inclusion and equity. And each one of them, diversity is just you're counting people, and we know that we have a diverse city. When we look at inclusion, that's where those who live in the city actually have the ability to share voice and space and help kind of shape their future. But when we move toward equity, there are those things that are placed within the structure of our shared life together that actually ensure that everyone has free access and the ability to thrive. And we know that systemic racism historically has held back many of our BIPOC neighbors. And so this is a very helpful step for the city of Renton to take a look at these budget demands and to really kind of wrestle with how do we stay ahead of the curve. I was reflecting as we were having this meeting about when I first moved to Renton and I opened my first utility bill. And I remember like the shock of seeing different languages on a city bill for my water. And I remember calling my mom saying that this was a unique place that we were living in and how privileged I felt to live here in the city of Renton. I am so thankful that there is now the ordinance that has been passed that we are part of our business plan is to stand against racism and support racial equality that was passed on August 3rd. And I am so heartened by this. And I look forward to these demands to be wrestled with and to be adopted so that we can continue to be an anti-racist city. Thank you so much. I yield.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address council on the budget public hearing? Please raise your hand. I see no one else, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Jason, do we have any correspondence?
I have no correspondence on this budget matter, sir.
Okay, thank you. What is the wish of the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council President Perez.
I move to close the public hearing and just to remind our community that during the next weeks, each department will be presenting in great detail more information about the proposed budget for 2021-2022. Thank you.
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved by Council President Perez, seconded by Councilmember Corman that we close the public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Next up is the administrative report.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I have two items. You can safely get rid of your household hazardous waste. The traveling waste mobile will be at McClendon Hardware at 440 Rainier Avenue South this Friday, October 9th through Sunday, October 11th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can visit King County Has Waste, which is HAZWASTE wastewa.gov to figure out which items you can drop off there. And then if the community's worried about the traffic impacts, they can go to rentonwa.gov/traffic to see all the traffic projects going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Next, we'll open up remote audience comment period. There remains the strong intent of the city to have public comment regularly included on our agendas. However, the city reserves the right to eliminate or end these public comment periods and/or remove anyone from the meeting at any point if we deem the system is being abused or is no longer suitable to allowing the city to conduct its necessary business. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to speak. You'll be called upon by Julie Medzigan, Council Liaison. Ms. Medzigan will call the speaker's name and unmute the appropriate microphone, which will send an automatic prompt to the speaker of, "You have been unmuted." This is the speaker's cue that it's their turn to speak. Please begin your comments by stating your name, city of residence, and the topic you are addressing. Speakers should be able to see a timer on the screen. When your time is almost up, please wrap up your comment. Ms. Medzigan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, my name is Julia Medzigian. I'm the City Council Liaison. I have 6 people signed up in advance to speak this evening for audience comment. The first is Gina Custer. Go ahead, Gina. Gina, yeah.
And the City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I requested to comment this evening, both as a City of Renton resident of almost 60 years and as a member of the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. I currently oversee 176 units of permanent supportive housing in South King County for Valley Cities Counseling and Consultation as the Director of Housing. I have seen firsthand what a difference supportive housing can make in the lives of folks who are chronically homeless and suffer from mental illness and/or an addiction disorder. And it is nearly impossible to recover from mental illness or substance abuse if you do not have a stable home. I have seen the changes folks have made receiving supportive services while residing in permanent supportive housing. And I've seen these folks remain stably housed, not for days or months, but for years. And in fact, sometimes more than 5 years. It does not happen overnight, no, but it doesn't have to take a lifetime either. Now is the time to act. The more folks we can place in permanent supportive housing and offer them the behavioral services that they need on an outreach basis in their homes, the more likely we are to see the homeless population decrease. We need all communities to do more, but there are some solutions like supportive housing with on-site behavioral health services that require us to work together. King County is looking at a plan that would bring immediate help in homes to 2,000 people right away and provide the lasting supports and structure that they need long term. It is important that we all work together to address these issues regionally. I urge you to slow down and make sure that the actions you take on behalf of this community fit together with the permanent supportive housing solutions described in the Health Through Housing plan. We all stand to be much better off if we act together as a region. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to our community. I yield.
Okay, the next person I have signed up in advance to speak is Megan Aubrin. Go ahead, Megan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Megan Aubrin. I gave that. 1 second, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Megan Aubrin, and I'm a resident of Renton. I work as an educator, evaluating students who qualify for special education, which has a lot of intersectionality with students served under McKinney-Vento. And I'm proud that my city is willing to step up and be a part of solutions on homelessness. But I want to talk about what those solutions need to look like and why I want us to be a part of a regional approach that creates health through housing 2,000 people quickly. I know from living here and from my work that we can solve homelessness, but we can't solve it one city or neighborhood at a time. I think we should be part of regional efforts that make sure we get both housing and supportive services by taking a harm reduction approach as well as prioritizing housing first. I've heard the council may be thinking of enacting their own sales tax instead of supporting the county's regional health through housing plan. As a constituent of Renton, I want to ask some questions and also urge you to support the county in their larger efforts. My main question, if you think it's so important to do this alone, what is your plan for ending homelessness in Renton? People who experience chronic homelessness live in and come from every community in our region. Homelessness can only be addressed here in our city if we band together. Piecemeal approaches just don't work. Homelessness doesn't stop at city limits. People who are experiencing homelessness seek shelter and resources throughout the county. The county's plan would bring relief to at least 2,000 people immediately. As a resident of Renton, I would urge you to work with King County so that our unhoused neighbors in Renton have the best chance at seeing their situation improve. We stand to be better if we act together for the region. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next person I have signed up to speak is Evan Mack. I don't see Evan. Evan, if you're out there, can you raise your hand? Okay, I don't see that, so we'll go with Maxine Anderson. Maxine, go ahead. Maxine? All right. Let's go with Kenya Escobar. Go ahead, Kenya.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thanks. Good evening. My name is Kenya Escobar, and I live and work in Renton, and I am here to ask you to please partner with the cities in King County and support regional funding for supportive housing for our neighbors who are homeless. Here we have a unique opportunity to partner together with King County to finally create solutions to chronic homelessness together, and I think we should seize that opportunity. We won't resolve this crisis if we do it in bits and pieces, city by city. We need a single big investment in supportive housing for us to finally end chronic homelessness. And as you know, rates of homelessness among BIPOC communities are disproportionately higher, and funding affordable housing and supportive services would mean we are reducing those racial disparities in homelessness. And I know this is important to members of this council. Mayor Pavone and Council President Perez wrote back in June in a Renton Reporter guest editorial that King County and DSC need to prioritize plans for a more permanent, safe, and sustainable location for the shelter residents. And when you discuss the Red Lion shelter, and the good news is that the plan that you called for is already in motion. We are ready to fund enough affordable places to live for everyone who needs one. And I'm here to ask you to allow Renton to be part of the solution and not exclude our city from being a partner in this really good collaborative project. If Renton goes its own way, I think it sends a message, and you're saying not in my backyard. And I know that this philosophy does not reflect the values of this beautiful, diverse city that I've called home for a year and a half. And when the time comes, I hope Renton won't be on the sidelines. Instead, we should be an active partner in this regional solution to homelessness. And thank you for your time, and have a good evening.
Okay, we've got Casey Hahn signed up for audience comment also. Casey, did you want to speak for audience comment as well?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Hello again, City Council members, Mr. Mayor, and all citizens represented on this call. My name again is Casey Hahn, and I have been a resident of Renton for 5 years, and I'm privileged to serve as pastor of St. Matthew's Lutheran Church in the Kennydale neighborhood. I also serve as an active board member on the Church Council of Greater Seattle. And I come to you in the capacity of as a public leader who is often on the front lines of human suffering. For the last 5 years, I have worked closely with the Meal Coalition, the Arise program with Catholic Social Services, the Center of Hope, and most recently with Dr. Linda, the Vision of Hope, a community resource event in partnership with Guy Williams from the City of Renton, Dr. Linda with the Sky Urban Transformation and Empowerment Center, and also Melissa Glenn from the King County Public Libraries. I have attended countless forums on the complexity of homelessness. Every story of a person who is unsheltered in King County, they are unique and different. But I would like a moment to just tell you about Nikki. I have been in conversation with Nikki for many years, and I've actually changed her name for the sake of privacy. Nikki has a developmental delay, as well as a history of childhood trauma that has left her living on the streets here in Renton for quite a few years. She has visited multiple shelters. However, she has paranoia as well as PSD from some abuse she's received, and so being in large crowds is very scary for her, as well as someone introduced her to a way to kind of cope on the streets, and so she does also have drug abuse as a part of her story as well. It has been really hard to find services for her, and I've tried many times to get interventions, to get into rehab, but it's really hard when someone is living on the streets and they don't have access to quick and easy drug treatment or food or therapeutic support or services. One day, as I was sitting with her in front of our church, as I had made a sandwich from her with whatever we had left over in our refrigerator, she said, "No one ever treats me like a human." And I believe that Nikki is in desperate need of long-term solution. I would like to offer my wholehearted support for the it is the Health Through Housing Project proposal that will be going before the King County Council. This minimal tax will provide 2,000 beds and services for the chronically homeless. This initiative moves past shelters or tent camps to provide housing with wraparound services for our most traumatized and marginalized citizens. The goal is to provide almost 45% of those who are experiencing homelessness chronically in King County immediate shelter. For the city of Renton, this would be advantageous for us as we do not currently have enough shelter space for all those who are experiencing homelessness. Those who will be served are people like Nikki, persons who have behavioral health issues, or senior citizens, persons with disabilities, domestic violence survivors, and at-risk families and unaccompanied youth and young adults. As a community, we have been trying to solve this, and I do believe that we will be served as we continue to work with King County and move with this health to housing proposal. It is a worthwhile next step. I long for us to continue to alleviate the suffering of our neighbors who have so many obstacles to be able to be in a place where they are safe and they can actually live the best life that they can. Thank you so much, and I yield.
Okay, we'll try Maxine Anderson one more time. Maxine, can you hear us? Okay, well, I don't have anyone else signed up to speak. For those in the audience that would like to address the council for audience comment, please raise your hand. If you called into Zoom on your telephone, you can do so by pressing *9. Okay, we'll start with Mitch Shepard.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pavone, President Perez, and fellow City Council members. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I came to speak on behalf of Mina Merchant and the Black Lives Matter mural. I am her husband, and we are both proud residents of this city. We love the people and the culture of those people. As you may recall, Mina has been working with several other members of the community to have a meaningful mural in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, painted on a street here in Renton. This mural is not intended to harbor ill will or make any proclamations against any other persons or entities. It is intended to represent love and solidarity and support for our Black brothers and sisters and children and mothers and fathers. It is meant to say that your Black families, to our Black families, that Renton hears you, that Renton loves you, and that Renton supports you. As I mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of Mina because just a few short weeks ago, Mina was diagnosed with breast cancer. Just 2 days after this diagnosis, still wrapped in a haze of emotional devastation,
Mina attended the vigil for Breonna Taylor at the foot of the steps of our city hall. And despite the pain, the fear, and the loss of understanding of how our family would continue to exist, she attended the vigil in support of a life lost to the meaningless tragedy that is racism. It was there that I was able to make the connection that I share with you now. Racism is a cancer. This world has its cancer. This country has the cancer. This city has the cancer. Racism is a pernicious, destructive, debilitating disease that permeates our inner systems and disintegrates our normal functions, and untreated, it will destroy us from within. But the worst part about racism is that, like cancer, you do not have to be a bad person to support its growth. It can come from just the very nature of your life and all of our lives. It comes in the things you do day in and day out that are just a part of your being, a part of our code, a part of our comforts. And maybe it's something that was handed down to you from a previous generation. And you can't assume that it's really affecting you until you get the news one day that a young black child is shot for playing with a toy, or a young black man is killed for selling CDs, or a young black woman is murdered for sleeping in her own bed. Every community where these tragedies occur lives through this pain, and every community speaks words of sympathy and grief, yet none of these communities cures the cancer, because the cure involves a commitment to change that is aggressive and dedicated and system altering, and those things are scary. It's scary when your doctor tells you that you have to change everything about the way you live just to keep on living, and it's scary to leave your comforts and navigate the darkness of the unknown. But the thing is that you are still you. Renton doesn't have to lose itself to find a cure. What comes from this change is a wiser, healthier, happier, better version of you. Our country is deep in the throes of race-based division and turmoil, and it is desperate to see some shining light that can cut through the darkness, to bring people together and show an example of how to find a cure. And I want to believe that Renton could be that place, but sometimes I worry it doesn't want to be. Since it was introduced, the Black Lives Matter mural proposal has been stymied by a persistent series of bureaucratic mumblings, rather than the boisterous chorus and support an issue as important as this could and should be met with. And please allow me to be clear, the Black Lives Matter mural doesn't even represent any kind of meaningful change. It isn't a form of treatment. It doesn't offer a solution to racism. It is merely an acknowledgement that racism exists, the city hears the voice of its weeping brothers and sisters, and that it appreciates what it means to have the support of your home. You cannot fight cancer with half-hearted attempts. Cancer doesn't care, and neither does racism. You fight these with everything you have, because you cannot survive unless you do. I know Mina wishes she could continue this fight in person, and I know that when she heals, she will rejoin as loud and excited as ever. In the meantime, please just take a moment to ponder how your life has either felt or would feel to be told that your very existence depends on drastic, meaningful change, because that is the truth of this city. I just hope we have the ability to hear it. Thank you. We love you all. We believe in you all.
Okay, the next person I have with their hand raised is Winter Cashman.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Council Member Corman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Mitch, I first of all, I agree with his comment that racism is a cancer, and all of his points resonate with me. They're not lost on me, and I do care very much about the mural. But I also just wanted to pass along, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us, my love and concern for Mina. I hadn't heard this, and I'm really sorry to hear about that, and I will be thinking and praying for her. I just want him to know how much she means to all of us. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, Winter, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Winter. I'm a Renton Highlands resident. I just wanted to express my support for the Stand for Justice budget demands. And in addition, I wanted to, after hearing comments tonight, support working with the county for the Health Through Housing initiative. That's all I came here to support tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, if there's anyone else that would like to address the council. All right, Brianna. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening again, City Council and Mr. Mayor. I would also like to stand in support of the Black Lives Matter street mural, and just again stand in support of Mina and her battle with her family. Thank you so much for putting your heart out there. Again, it would be a symbol for all of us in the melanated part of the community to see that our city reflects our care, the care for us. When Chadwick Boseman passed away of cancer, the world was shocked. His legacy as Black Panther gave children and people around the world an image of Black excellence and Black beauty. And it was D.L. Hughley who mentioned how he was surprised at how we, as the Black community, really wanted to see ourselves in a positive light. And it's because we don't see ourselves in a positive light very often in media, very often betrayed in most things. So once again, please consider again the Black Lives Matter street mural, to say it boldly that Black lives do matter. Thank you, and I yield.
Okay, next we have Dr. Linda Smith. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to echo my support for the health to housing proposal. I spent about 45 minutes today on the phone with Angela Sanfilippo, South King County Housing Homeless Partner. And in that conversation, we were talking about the pathway out of homelessness and how do we create long-term sustainable housing here in the city of Renton and South King County. And I believe that because of the nature of homelessness, it is important that this is a collaborative effort in order to eradicate this and bring some end to it. So I just really want to support that health to housing proposal initiative that's in the works now, and for you to seriously consider being a part of that, because homelessness is not going to go away. The numbers continue to increase, and we have to solve this problem. The Seattle King County area ranks about number 7 in the nation as far as homelessness. And many of us have been around since the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and it's only increased. But we have to be intentional about it, and we have to work collaborative with cities around us in order to bring about change here in the city of Renton. Thank you.
Right, do I have anyone else that would like to address the council tonight on audience comment? Please raise your hand. I see no one else, Mr. Mayor. I believe Jason has some correspondence. Jason?
Yes, thanks, Julia. I received an email, and for the record, I did send this email to council. It's from Will Tosburn from Government Affairs and Contracts Coordinator for Solid Ground. He sent an email on behalf of the King County Alliance for Human Services, and essentially they urge support for the Health Through Housing bill, and they recommend that we do not pass the sales tax ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. We have 8 items for council consideration.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President Perez.
I move that the council concur with the consent agenda as published.
Second.
It's been moved by Council President Perez, second by Council Member Corman, that the council concur with the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. All right, and up next is unfinished business. Council President Perez.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Van.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Benedetti.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McGurven.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Transportation Committee has a committee report to present.
Okay, Transportation Aviation Committee report, the 2021 through 2026 six-year transportation improvement program. The Transportation Aviation Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to authorize the mayor and city clerk to approve the annual updates to the 2021-2026 six-year transportation improvement program and present the resolution for reading and adoption.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember McGurven.
I move that the council concur with the Transportation Committee report.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman. The council concur with the Transportation Committee report. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Councilmember Prince.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Corman.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Next up, we have legislation. We have 3 resolutions, an ordinance for first reading and 2 for first and second reading.
Okay, the first resolution is regarding setting a public hearing for an upcoming street vacation petition. A resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, setting a public hearing date regarding vacation of a portion of an alley located near 1300 Bronson Way North and situated east of Garden Avenue North, west of Meadow Avenue North, north of Bronson Way North, and south of North 2nd Street. This is the 1300 Bronson Way Alley Street Vacation Petition, number VAC 20001. And for the record, they want to set the hearing on October 19th, 2020.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
I move that the resolution be adopted as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember O'Halloran, that the resolution be adopted as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes.
Okay, this resolution is actually for the TIP. So, a resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, updating and extending Renton's 6-year transportation improvement program for 2021 through 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember McGurven.
I would like to move that this resolution be adopted as read.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember McGurven, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the resolution be adopted as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the final resolution is regarding designating a new newspaper for Renton. A resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, designating the Seattle Times as the city's official newspaper.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Council President Perez.
I move the resolution to be adopted as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Council President Perez, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that the resolution be adopted as read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Van.
if I may ask a question for clarity, because in the resolution, it mentions that at least through the end of 2020, the city may continue to publish a secondary unofficial copy of legal notices to the Renton Reporter. So when you say at least, are you saying just up until then and potentially later? Just for clarification.
Yes, it's the new paper of record will be the Seattle Times, but just for continuity, through the end of the year, we're going to do the Renton Reporter also.
And then it will end?
It'll be the Seattle Times, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so next we have an ordinance for first reading. It's regarding docket item 164. This is docket 14, Group E. I believe the last of the docket 14 ordinances. It's called Relief from RMC Standards, and you have to bear with me, there's quite a bit here. So, an ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, providing for relief from code standards by amending subsections 42110A, 42110E2, 42120A, 42120B, 42120C, 43100E, B, 4495I, 4870D8, 49250B, 49250C, and 49250D of the Renton Municipal Code, repealing subsections 43100F, 43100G, 44130H, and 44130I of the Renton Municipal Code, re-lettering subsection 43100I of the Renton Municipal Code to 43100F, and adding 4410Q to Section 4410 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, I have two more ordinances. Both of these are for first reading and advancement to second and final reading tonight. So the first one is regarding the moratorium that we had the public hearing on earlier tonight. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, extending by 6 months the moratorium on land use applications for large residential projects, 150 units or more in a project within the Sunset area, setting forth findings of fact in support of said 6-month extension, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move this ordinance be advanced to second and final reading tonight.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be moved to second and final reading tonight. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay.
Okay, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, extending by 6 months the moratorium on land use applications for large residential projects, 150 units or more in a project within the Sunset area, setting forth findings of fact in support of said 6-month extension, providing for severability, declaring an emergency, and establishing an immediate effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move adoption of the ordinance as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember McGurven, that this ordinance be adopted, and it requires a roll call.
Okay, Council President Perez.
Aye.
Councilmember Van.
Aye.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Aye.
Councilmember McGurven.
Aye.
Councilmember Prince.
Aye.
And Councilmember Corman.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor. All ayes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, the final ordinance is also for first and second reading. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, authorizing an additional sales and use tax for housing and related services in accordance with RCW 82-14-530, as it was amended by House Bill 1590, Chapter 222, Laws of 2020, amending subsections 510.1 and 510.2 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
Yeah, so I've listened with great compassion and concern for the comments we've heard tonight, and I agree with all the comments about the desire to help provide affordable housing. But I have strong confidence that we'll be able to do that by approving this ordinance, and so with that, I think I will move that we place this ordinance on second and final reading tonight. and then make a statement afterwards, if I may.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember O'Halloran, that this ordinance be placed on second and final reading tonight. Randy?
Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, something that, and I know there's probably people that would disagree with some of what I'm going to say, but I think it's important that people know that, so the city of Renton is unlike most other cities in King County in that we do have our own housing authority. And the Renton Housing Authority is going to be 80 years old next year. It's responsible for having put the units in place back in World War II. They spent about $3,000 per unit building worker housing. Back then, they put in thousands of units. Our housing authority has managed to, over the years, build very, very high quality units for like the lowest cost. They've been a very efficient producer of housing. They have been collecting property throughout Renton, much of it here in the Highlands, an area that's going to be served with better transit soon as part of region-wide planning. And I've been looking forward to this ever since it was a House bill to get through the system so that we could actually tap this funding so that a lion's share of it could go to the Renton Housing Authority to continue to build housing. They currently own 1,000 units of housing that's subsidized. They provide housing for families that would absolutely be out on the street if they didn't have housing with the Housing Authority. They give them very dignified, very beautiful housing. They've been doing it in smaller projects. My wife and I took a walk today past the new library and the new playground, and look, the footings are in for another project they're doing that's going to be like 16 units. So the important thing for people to understand is, so we have a housing authority, Renton does. King County has a housing authority, which is about the age of the Renton Housing Authority, and it's done good work. And then Seattle has a housing authority. Bellevue doesn't, Kirkland doesn't, Auburn doesn't, none of those other cities do. But so in the case of Renton, by adopting this sales tax in the city of Renton, we can then work as a community to figure out what percentage we're going to supply to the Renton Housing Authority so that they can do some of the building on those lots that they've acquired. And we can still provide, work with the county to provide other housing that they're interested in. We'll be full partners, but we will have a way to get money to the housing authority so that they can actually build out some of their plans. So that is why I'm encouraging the council members to support this with me.
Thank you. Councilmember McGurven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also agree with much of what Councilmember Portman just said, and I will say he summed up very well a lot of what I was thinking. Namely, this is, I was reflecting as we were hearing people speaking earlier on the budget and asking the city to devote more to health and human services. And to me, this is doing exactly that, but we don't have the tools to do it without this funding. And so those two issues seem somewhat at odds to me. I do agree with Councilmember Portman. We can still partner with the county with this money effectively. We can still partner with SCIP. We can partner through the Renton Housing Authority. I think this gives us the most flexibility and ensures that we see the best benefit for our residents here in Renton, because if the county controls it, we only have potentially 30% of that money coming back directly to this community. I think the thing we need to, in passing this, agree with, though, is that we have to work collaboratively as a region. That doesn't stop by adopting the sales tax. We have to continue to advocate and push for better funding sources from the state legislature, and I hope that's on our legislative agenda again, because it's not going to get it done unless we work together, nor is this alone going to be a solution in itself. But I think this is the right thing to do for Renton.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes, I would like to just echo everything that's been said. I am completely empathetic with the speakers who came before us, and I agree with Councilmember McGurven and Corman. To me, the most important aspect of this is that by passing this within our own city council, we are retaining 100% of the say on how that money is going to be spent in our community. The taxes are coming whether we pass it or not. And if we join, quote unquote, with King County, we are in essence handing them 70 cents of every Renton dollar to spend outside of Renton. We are also handing them the right to tell us how that remaining 30 cents is going to be spent in our community. And I cannot get comfortable finding a way to explain why we would choose to do that to our constituents. So this is about controlling the dollars that are generated in our community and us having the ability and the decision-making on how those dollars will be reinvested in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Van.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just echo my colleagues before me, and I think that having heard the community speaking and regarding to this, I very much understand what community's point is, but there's certainly, affordable housing is definitely a regional issue, and that City of Renton continue to work collaboratively with our King County partners. Certainly the tax component, it's going to be coming, and that either way, it's a matter of control where we can reinvest in our communities, especially when we're looking at programs that are not even included in the proposed budget this time around, right? And so I hope that we continue to explore options to work with King County, and that we, after the passing, that we look into community needs assessment of what is really impacting our communities. I think this has been said by Councilmember McIrvin, and I just wanted to make that comment. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Benedetti.
Sorry, trying to unmute at the same time here. The thing that that has been hard is that I know that this is being framed as a vote against the county's plan, and I just want to say that is not certainly where my own heart is coming from. I see this as an opportunity for us to continue partnering with the county and looking for solutions that are regionally based. And I also see that this is an opportunity that we might not ever have again to be able to fund some of the programs and actions of the Renton Housing Authority. I know that there have been some incredible plans that they have been working on for years to redevelop some of the key areas in our city to really make some affordable solutions and beautiful places for our residents to live. And so I feel that it's one of those actions that comes along very rarely, that we have the opportunity to do something really great as far as affordable housing goes in the city of Renton. And, I recognize that there's a lot of energy behind the county's plan, and I do want us to continue to work towards a solution that does make sense regionally. It's just that right now, this makes sense for our community.
Thank you. Council President Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Benedetti said very, very well. It's very sad that actually the rhetoric is that we are not working regionally. I think that the fact that Councilmember Ed Prince is one of the three elected officials that is in the Regional Homeless Authority speaks for our commitment to working regionally at this level. We have projects that are ready to start being developing, and the Sunset is one of them that if we don't do this in our lifetimes, it's never going to happen. So, Councilmember Corman, I very much appreciate your statement because you say it really, really well, how well we have worked with the Renton Housing Authority. And just providing housing is not affordable housing is not the only commitment that we have by doing this, is also to keep serving our most vulnerable population. We have heard several people asking us to do more in the budget on social services and providing health support. Councilmember McKibben just mentioned it. We're going to need that money if we want to expand a lot of the programs that we have. And this gives us the flexibility to diversify this money. One of the comments that resonates with me is, what is our plan to fix homelessness? I wish King County and us, we have that answer, because right now we are still working, trying to figure out if it's placing people in housing before they go homeless, or housing the people that are homeless. I think it's both. I think we have to do both, and it's exactly the same thing that we are tackling with this. So I'm going to vote for this, very confident that is the best outcome, not just for the city of Renton, but as well for the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Prince, do you want to make it a full deck here?
I think we should vote.
Okay. The vote on the table is to move the ordinance to second and final reading tonight. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion passes.
Okay, I'll read it again. An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, authorizing an additional sales and use tax for housing and related services in accordance with RCW 8214-530 as it was amended by House Bill 1590, Chapter 222, Laws of 2020, amending Sections 510.1 and 510.2 of the Renton Municipal Code, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
I move adoption of the ordinance as read.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Corman, seconded by Councilmember O'Halloran, that the ordinance be adopted as read. This requires a roll call.
Hey, Council President Perez.
Aye.
Councilmember Van.
Aye.
Councilmember Benedetti.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Aye.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Aye.
Councilmember Prince.
Aye.
And Councilmember Corman.
Aye.
Roll call, Mr. Mayor. All ayes.
Okay, thank you. Next is new business. Council President Perez.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just give me 1 sec. Sorry. Okay. Next, Monday, October 12th at 4 p.m., we will have our committee of the whole via video conference. And we have the item in the agenda will be budget, department presentations, and council deliberations. Also on Monday, October 12th at 7 p.m., we will have our city council meeting via video conference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Van.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any new business, but I do would like to ask that you or the administration can kindly give us an update on the Black Lives Matter mural, and that you know, because we've been working on it, and it was referred to the administration, and then just with that.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Benedetti.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to refer to administration that we explore the feasibility of creating an Equity and Empowerment Commission as part of the 21 and 22 budget. Thank you.
That was the motion. I'll second it.
I don't know. I did not hear the motion.
It was yeah, I believe it was a motion.
That's the motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's been moved that the administration explore the construction of a, will you read that back to me, an equity and?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, let me read that again. I'd like to refer that the administration explore the feasibility of creating an Equity and Empowerment Commission as part of the 21-22 budget.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that it be referred to the administration to explore the possibility of an equity and empowerment division. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay.
Got it.
New business, let's see here. Councilmember O'Halloran.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McGurven.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Prince.
Well, the Finance Committee had a week off, but we do have business on Monday, October 12th at 2 p.m. We'll be meeting via video conference. We have 3 items on the agenda: vouchers, youth and amateur sports grant acceptance, and emerging issues in finance. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Corman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to announce a Planning and Development Committee meeting for Monday, October 12th at 2:45 p.m. It's a video conference. Full agenda, we've got 6 items. The first is a SKC-HHP work plan resolution. Second is SKC-HHP budget resolution. Third item is docket 15. Fourth item is comprehensive plan amendments. Fifth item is school impact fees. Lastly, emerging issues in CED. And that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Jason, did we announce the council meeting next week?
Yes, Council President Perez announced it.
Okay, all right. Then what's the wish of the council?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Prince, seconded by Councilmember Corman, that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you all.